So on the downside, since I just got back from Puerto Rico, I haven't, like, for the last week or a little over a week, gotten much work done. So I'm still not quite ready with the 1.7.20 stuff. I would be very surprised if it's not, since I'll have to skip next week. I'm assuming it'll be ready by the following week. But but yeah, still working on that big massive rewrite, not rewrite, but that big massive reorganization thing. But again, the upside of that is when that's done, like 1.8 will be not done, but like that'll be a huge chunk of the work for 1.8. Even though this is technically just like a minor update for 1.7. So, but anyway, yeah, the this week will just be random chat and Q&A, and if anyone has anything to show, please speak up. So I will just start reading stuff. So, all right, people get knocked out when they spin. Can we have something similar mechanism? Oh my gosh, it jumped. When people continuously swing to and fro. Oh, maybe is that? I'd be curious. Like, is this something that is a problem? Like, or is that do people do that a lot, or is it kind of like an exploit or something? Because part of me is like, I kind of feel like that's when I designed like the punching mechanic, I sort of envisioned it as like just kind of that's what people would be doing is like swinging left and right to try to like do more powerful punches and doing like jumps and spins and stuff like that. Um, so it's like I don't want to punish that behavior too much, but if it's something where it's like that's all people are doing, or yeah, if it seems like that's a exploit, then yeah, we should. Oh hey Sock, for 2 minutes. How are you doing? When you're throwing, the player becomes heavy. Yeah, it's this kind of goes back to what we were talking about. I think a few times ago is like it would be fun to play with some of these physics, and a lot of it is like I've not played with it since it was written. Since the physics were written like back 11 years ago or whenever that was. Um, just because it breaks network play and things like that. So this new like scene versioning stuff is really gonna it'll open up a lot of doors to be able to play with that stuff. So it will be interesting to yeah, certain things like that. Like we could play with the idea that maybe picking up stuff doesn't weigh you down as much, or the jump heights, or just messing with the physics knobs in general and seeing what happens. But yeah, coffee time today. It was no coffee time last week because I was in on a lovely island sipping tropical drinks. But but yeah, here this week. Most annoying part of the physics is when you just fall down because you suck at playing BS. Are you talking about like spinning falling down or just other random stuff? Oh, making a film with your friends. Very cool. All right, see you, Sock. Good luck with the film. All right, what is this? That's a wonderful monkey. And as required, everywhere new I go, I get a Starbucks cup. So I have a new Puerto Rico Starbucks coffee mug, but it's in the dishwasher. It's not. I need to clean it before I can use it. So I'll reveal that next time. It's very exciting. Yeah, Sock is awesome. If you haven't been tuning in, we've been playing lots of Sock's stuff. Explode an area here. Still got it on my desktop. Stupid warning. So. Oh, this is interesting. The stamina bar, like this is something I've thought about. That well, I've actually thought about it in terms of like running. I think that could be an interesting dynamic. Like, what if you were limited in like how much you could run? Like, would that make running more valuable? Like when you run for just a certain moment where it's like beneficial, or it'd make it harder to dodge bombs and stuff too, because most people would be walking a bit more than running. Like right now, the game is pretty fast. People are pretty much running all the time, but it makes me wonder like what it would be like if it was more like walking was the default and running was just like something you did for a specific purpose, like to do like a running punch or something. Could be fun to play with, maybe. Again, as we're revising physics and as we can do that stuff, It'd be interesting to try it. Spin or yeah, for spinning that could be interesting. Or yeah, I don't know. This brings up a lot of questions. Um, Also, like a bar, not that it's tricky with this stuff because I feel like you don't want to add too many bars and graphs and things because then it looks more like you're, doing some sort of like math. I feel like you stop looking at the player if there's too many bars and graphs. But it'd be interesting, like some sort of bar to like show you how strong your punches are or something. Like it would go up as you're running or go up as you're spinning or something like that. I guess that's not stamina. That's something different. But like it would be interesting to play with that idea. Like, what if you could make it more clear, like your punch strength or something like that. Or like a power up where you could like just throw stuff farther. That could be interesting. Of course, that would probably like mess up bombs and stuff. You wouldn't be able to like hit targets, but like throw players super far. That could be fun. Enable entire team must finish for default playlists. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I feel like part of the reason I left like entire team must finish off is for random online games where there's some random person that joins who's never played before, and so it's like that person can screw up their whole team. So I feel like it's like a tricky decision. Like, do you punish the team for having that random new person on there, or but like you said, the downside is if you don't do it that way, then everyone else just tries to like mess up everyone else except for like the few people in front. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I think for going back to like squads mode, when squads mode comes out, and it's more like you're playing with a set of friends that you have chosen. In that case, it probably would make sense to have that be on, because then it's like you kind of who your team is and you can like rely on them. Um, I don't think we can play Explodinary today. Sock had that server set up, but Sock is not here today, sadly. So if anyone else has a server, we could jump in and play something else, or play regular mode or something like that in a bit. I'm up for whatever. Do I have the first version of Bomb Squad somewhere? Yes. Well, not necessarily the first version. It's funny, I have a bunch of like old files archived and things. So occasionally I go hunting for it. Like I will look and like poke around my old archives and see if I can find like the oldest version of Bomb Squad. Um, I have a version like 0.5 or no 0.3. I think I found version 0.3, which is probably pretty close to the beginning. I don't think I have like a running copy of that. I have like the source code, but it would be a little bit difficult to compile that. It'd be interesting to try. Actually, I'm sure it probably would compile on like Linux, I'm guessing, or maybe Windows. Because I'm working here on a Mac, and I feel like Macs change a lot. Like Apple deprecates things quickly, and so it's like something that compiled a few years ago likely won't compile anymore. Um, but something like Linux, I feel you could probably still compile something that was written in 2005 relatively easily. So it would be interesting to like see the oldest version of the game that I could get running. Yeah, this is interesting too. Like Bomb Squad is meant to be a funny game for family gatherings, but here in India, people turned it into a competitive game and listed on esports in a heartbeat. It's that is kind of the interesting thing with all this stuff is like, yeah, it is kind of intended to be like a light, goofy party game for friends, like people who have never played it before. But then, yeah, there is this group of people that are super competitive and talking about, yeah, like slight rule tweaks to make increase the competitiveness, or kind of gear it more for like pro players and stuff. So it's really interesting, like kind of trying to think about how to reach those two different groups, and like not adding too much stuff to make it too pro friendly, and still keep it like newbie friendly, but also allowing it to be competitive. So it's interesting. Goofy ah game. What? The other I've mentioned this before too. The other like slightly awkward thing with the old versions is, I had a bunch of like copyrighted stuff in there because it was literally just intended for me to play with my friends and stuff. So, there's like celebrity voices and things like that, which, I could not obviously include in the real game. So there's that part of me that's like, I want to be careful about letting that get out there too much. Don't want to like get in trouble for that or something. I guess people do mods and things that have, like celebrity stuff or copyrighted stuff in there, and I need to look into like how that works. Like when do people get in trouble for that kind of stuff, or, I want to be careful, but it'd also be cool to kind of share the the stupid early versions with people. Oh, I remember the EFC stuff. Yeah, I could do that too. Like Sock was actually I shared a few of like the old textures and things like that with Sock. He was gonna like recreate like the old versions of some of the characters or something, or like the original Spaz back before they had like full ragdoll skeletons. It was just like two spheres. Well, howdy, Mickey Rog. Oh yeah, this is an interesting idea. Please add where you do something epic, it becomes slow mo. I was thinking that could have been like a fun. I was thinking of calling it like Zack Snyder mode or something. If you're familiar with like Zack Snyder, I guess his name is. Did all of his movies like 300? It's like that slow motion, like black and white, gritty stuff where it slows down when someone punches and there's like slow motion like blood. Like I thought it would just be funny to do like a play mode like that, kind of like epic mode, but it would be like Snyder mode where it would just be like black and white and dreary looking. Whenever you like punch someone, it would like slow down and maybe have like slow motion blood flying off or something. I don't know. I never actually made it, but it sounded funny. That's also why, not to get off on technical nerdy stuff, like I think it would be super cool to be able to do plugins or, like game mods that would like just modify any game mode to change them around. So things like epic mode would be one of those, and then Snyder mode could be one of those too. Just something to make any game essentially like that, like slow it down when someone lands a punch. What do you mean by that slow mo bomb? Like what would that do? Sounds interesting. It like slows people down. Yeah, that could be. Now like the the nerd part of my brain is thinking like how the physics would work there. Like how could I slow down part of the simulation but keep the rest going? It's probably possible. I'd have to experiment with it. You could probably do something like, I don't know, like the rigid bodies like within that area would only like update every other step or something like that. Or I don't know. It'd be interesting to try. Yeah, it does feel like you'd have to. I mean, to do it like super smoothly, yeah, the game would have to be, or the engine would have to be kind of designed for that, where like different things could progress at different speeds. Like right now, there's the built-in stuff to like turn up and down the overall game speed, and that's what Epic Mode uses, things like that. But there's not that control for like individual things. That would have to be kind of a little extra on top. Like I said, you could do it for the whole thing. So like we were talking about like Snyder mode, where like when someone lands a punch, like the entire thing slows down like for just a moment and like zooms in on that spot, and rotates around or something. If replays just rerun the game on engine, can we get the record of keystrokes from the replay file? So the replay file, it doesn't actually record keystrokes. It basically records like input commands. So if you dig through the source code, you'll see that there's a class called just like input device, and that is in charge of, it abstracts something like the keyboard or a gamepad or whatever, and it reads the like the button presses from that, and then it translates those into game commands. So game commands are things just like jump press, jump release, which I guess technically, like if you're considering that to be like a button press, then you can get that. You can see like, okay, this player held jump at this time and let go at this time. So all that stuff is in like those commands are in the replay, but it doesn't contain, when you say keystrokes, it doesn't contain like oh, okay, or like letters on a keyboard or something. It's just like game commands, if that makes sense. Bomb Squad will have lore someday. You mean like in-game lore or like lore about the game itself, like the early versions of the game or something? Because this got brought up is like, should there be like an in-game story or something? Like, should the characters have backstories and stuff like that? Oh, okay. So you meant, yeah. So if you meant like punch press, punch release, jump press, jump release, all that kind of stuff, like that is all part of the game stream. So if you went in there, you'd be able to, you could add like a little print or something, and you could see like player ID 3 pressed jump, you know. Um, so you could like strip, get all those events. But like I said, it doesn't have low level key presses. Like it wouldn't have like chat messages or things like that, like low level keys that people are pressing. So there shouldn't be any sensitive stuff in there. And that goes into another topic, is like, should chat messages be part of the game replay? And I know someone asked that previously, and my opinion is no, because that would lead to awkward situations where you're talking about a friend or something, and then they share a replay, and What is GOAP? I should know that, but what is that? So implementing like, yeah, smarter bots for PvP, goal oriented action planning. Okay. It would be like, I'm sure that would be a fun thing to play with. Like, part of me thinks it would be fun to just have a mode where it's like bot competitions. Like, people could write their own little bots and just we could watch them fight. It's like Robot Wars. um, so it makes me wonder, like, is there some bits we could add to the engine, just like a ray test function, or a few little functions to something that like bots could use as like their eyes and ears, just to kind of like sense the world around them, and then people could like build up fun, like bot AI around that stuff. Get a Chat GPT 4 bot, like, I don't know. Yeah, that would be interesting. So many like fun ideas that would, like, each of these would be fun to do, but the sad thing is thinking about it, it's like each one of these would be like a few months of work, like going down a little rabbit hole. But we'll get to some of them.
Hello.
Hello.
All right, so it works.
Yes.
So definitely I was thinking about those intelligent bots, but because a lot of people were asking about that, and it's something that was happening like for years now,
Uh huh.
where people wanted PvP compatible bots, and I knew all kinds of like limitations about that,
Yeah.
and I think people are definitely interested, like what's actually going on. What if you want these bots? What is actually required to get these working? So I think even though it's kind of gonna get a bit nerdy, because we're talking about AI here, hopefully I can make it digestible to like most people.
Cool. So.
So the idea basically is, so how does the actual bots like in co-op work right now? Because I think that's something that people should know. So bots by themselves have no eyes, they have no ears, and they have no touch. The only thing they know is where they are and when the player is. So this definitely works for games like Onslaught, where the only thing they need to do is run towards the player and maybe have some like very simple logic depending about when they should run, when they should punch, when they should jump and stuff. So there's like this giant SpaceBot class which has like a state machine. State machine is basically like you have a bot which has dozens of different states. You have a chase, you have flee, you have other stuff. But the idea is when the bot is in some kind of state, it does a thing, maybe pushes a button or something, and it can go from one state to the other, depending on what's happening. So, for example, in the Ninja Bot, for example, it has an ability which basically means run towards the player and then try to like punch jump him to death or something like that. And after a while, just stop running towards them. Just give him a break. Just start fleeing. So that's like very simple, very simple behavior in terms of doing that. So it's not very smart. And run around there's like logic, which means am I in this box? Then I'm just gonna walk towards that direction, and that's all I care about. So the bots are simple, but they work for co-op or onslaught because there's no like obstacle avoidance or anything like that. And in football, it works as well. So when there's walls, we don't have to like worry about that. So for people who want to experiment with bots in PvP maps like Crack Castle, for example, you might notice bots don't know how to avoid and find a path forward. So you wanna put them in and tell them, hey, I want to cap the flag. Then what they do, they just try to kill the players, and they don't know what the walls are, they don't know where the paths to go are, and all that kind of stuff. So the behavior we have right now is basically not up to par with what you want to create. And the issue becomes even more apparent when we want to actually code some kind of pathfinding from one place to another. Most modern games have something called a nav mesh, which is basically like a little network or like a spider web of points which are connected with lines. And the idea is, okay, I'm in point A and I can follow these lines to reach point B. Okay, which points I have to reach in order to like get them from one place to another. So this is the most basic way to accomplish that. In Bomb Squad, you would have to define them yourself. You could make like a bot that's like reading the entire map or something, but we don't have raycasts. This is something like that's kind of complex, let's say. And I don't think the game has a raycast. It doesn't have raycast, right?
There is Ravecast functions like in the Dynamics library, but I'm not exposing them through Python, so we would have to do that. You'd have to just add some little Python Raycast thing. So we could do that.
Okay. For those not know, Raycast is like casting a line from one point to another, and I'm gonna do that and say, okay, am I hitting something? What are we hitting? Where did we hit that? And stuff like that. So this could be our sense of touch in a game if we wanted to have bots that react to like stuff around them. But if we don't have that, we have to create a map or a version of the map by ourselves. So that's what the nav mesh is about. So if you want to make a CTF map compatible with this, we would have to just make a network of points connected with lines. So when I tell the bot, okay, go to point this one. So okay, I'm currently at this point, and then I'm gonna just go to this point, that, and then boom, there's our path. So there's lots of algorithms to do that. I'm not gonna get into detail there because there's lots of them. But generally speaking, it's like those algorithms where you basically have to find a path from one point to another. So the idea is simple, the implementation not so much. There's lots of stuff that can go wrong. But once we have that, we have a bot that can go from one point to the next. In terms of Bomb Squad, we would probably do something like okay, so what is the nearest point near me? Because of course we can make areas or something like that. So for example, when I jump off the map and the bot decides, okay, I should go towards the player, but wait, where's the point closest to the player where there's no point? So let's just say he's flying, I cannot reach him, so I'm just gonna stay there and do nothing. But then the player jumps on the map, back on the map, and it turns out, oh, there is a point near there, so I'm just gonna go towards there. So every point is like a breadcrumb, basically, like a line of breadcrumbs. I can go from one point to another. So this is the basics. We didn't even do the intelligence yet, and intelligence is like a second like part of this whole talk. So I'm just gonna give you a moment. Maybe discuss the logistics maybe before we continue.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like I feel like for me the tricky part of kind of more generalized bots would be kind of like how to expose them or something, or how to like, I'm sure you'll get into this, but like even if you do train a bot to do a specific mini game type, like that bot will still only be able to do that mini game type. If you teach a bot to play capture the flag, he won't know how to play keep away,
Yeah, generally. I definitely want to address that, which is why I don't want to just make a state machine bot, because that would be easy. I wanted to make a GOP bot, and I'm gonna mention what this thing is. But I think that now it's a good time to get into it, because we know the bot, what the bot can do. He can get from one point to another.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say we have a game like Assault, which is very simple. Just get to the flag and score a point, right? So let's have a goal. Get to the flag, get a point. So, or that should be the goal, like get the most points possible. So this is our goal. So how our bot is gonna accomplish it? What he can do? So he can run to a point. Okay, so that's only one action. So the bot has no other choices. This is a simple game. There's no power-ups. There's no bots or anything. There's only the flag and only the bot. So the only thing he knows is running and running and running towards the flag. So okay, he can get to the flag relatively easily. Okay, but what if we wanted to like split them up and have like have landmines randomly sometimes? Like every time we reach the flag, mines spawn randomly and something, and we want to tell the bot, okay, we're just gonna leave it alone. So he's gonna go to the flag, and boom, he reaches a mine, and he has no idea what mines are. So okay, so let's add another goal: don't die, because that seems like a very simple goal, right? Get to the flag and don't die. So we have two goals now, but here's the thing: we only have one action: get to the flag. So we're gonna have to find another action that will basically let us know how to do it. So the action is gonna be avoid mine or get far away from the mines. So the bot can basically switch on basically, for example, if we're close to the mine, let's avoid it or something like that. So the result of getting on a mine is death, let's say, or wasted time, depending on what we use for the metrics.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, the goal, like if you didn't catch already, it's basically we have a set of goals which have some kind of requirements like a score or some kind of condition, and then you have actions which basically promise a certain condition that's gonna be like completed once the action is completed too. So basically you can do that for very simple stuff like stealth enemies in a video game. For example, they have like patrol stuff. You could state machine with it, but sometimes you might want the enemy to sometimes flag the player or maybe help a fallen brother or something, maybe open a door if he hears a noise. The advantages of GOP is that it can allow for like very like complex behaviors in terms of like you can have multiple behaviors that are like very simple, very short term, and very long term at the same time. So you can have like you have a goal which is long term, and then you have short term like actions that the player can do. And that's one of the advantages of Go, because you can have complex behaviors which are basically almost procedural in a way. You just tell them what to do when something happens, and how do we achieve that. And generally speaking, the bot will always pick the action that is gonna be like the one that's gonna be have the best outcome in the close future. So for example, if the condition for don't die is get away from the mine, if we are too close, the bot might think, okay, getting closer to the flag is bad, I'm gonna try getting away from the mine instead, and then try again. When once we get away from it, of course we're gonna still have a stupid bot because he cannot defuse mines, but you know what to do now. Of course there's downsides. Downsides is bot and GOP bots aren't very teammates. They cannot really react to like on a dime in a fast-paced game, because every time you want to do a goal, you have to do an action, and you can't have like multiple actions at the same time. You generally have to pick one thing and just stick with it, which is why it's better for like stealth games or strategy games maybe. But for action games, you have to do like very quick, very short like bursts of inspiration, let's say. You cannot just come up with a goal or check our state like every minute or so. You have to do it like every second or less maybe. So it might not be very it isn't good on performance if you do it way too often. So generally speaking, if you want to have bots that are kind of intelligent, you have to think about, okay, which actions are actually important, which are not too complex, not too we need to have simple actions, simple conditions. Goals have to have simple conditions too, which is why when the only condition is score, and something adds our score, something removes our score, that's way easier than having like multiple like complex conditions. Even though you can do that, it's just gonna be less performant. And like I mentioned before, the Go bots are very selfish. When you have teammates, they cannot really coordinate with each other. They cannot create complex plans or anything. So every like Go bot is like selfish and only cares for himself, which is kind of appropriate when it comes to Bomb Squad on servers. So I think having a Go bot won't actually, surface this limitation to anybody unless we are doing like serious tournament plays or something. And that's one of the bigger like limitations. And of course I mentioned performance. There's a couple more that come to it, but I was thinking about making like a goat bot in bomb squad, which basically I would start with, making sure it moves from point to point, and then I can just teach them the goals. So when it comes to like making a basic bot, I could do like a list of goals, like don't die, score point, get to point, get flag, kill thing, that kind of stuff. Throw bomb maybe. Depends on what we want to accomplish. And generally speaking, when we add a new game mode, we would basically change those goals. Maybe we won't have kill players get point. Instead, I would have just get to flag and have kill points as like an optional objective, something that I would kill a player if the objective is gonna be harder if I don't do that. Like I mentioned before, the action is which action is done is based on which is gonna give us the most benefit in the long run. I cannot get to the flag if there's a bot guarding it and stuff like that. So this is like a very simple crash course. I definitely missed a lot of stuff, and it definitely seems like I have no idea if I missed something, or actually because I only read about it, and not even from any like long documentation. I only just like watched a couple of videos, did a couple like trying to understand other people implementing this. So I definitely missed something. Maybe I misunderstood something, but hopefully if I get to it, I might have like a very simple prototype and have like a bot. If a bot can get from one port to another, that's gonna be the first step to like having a bigger bot. Maybe we could have servers which could populate with Go bots while there's no players or something like that. Or even in co-op, we could teach a Go bot to play co-op.
Yeah, I think that
So that's gonna be it.
okay. Cool. Yeah,
So,
that is definitely something that'd be super fun to play with, and I do think it would be useful, especially like as squads mode is coming up. That's something I've thought about a
yeah.
lot. Is if you want to hop in with the squad and just like jump into a random match or something like that, and maybe there's no players available, like it'd be super cool to be able to throw a bot in there. Even if people don't realize it's a bot, just something to like fill the game up in places where maybe there's fewer servers or something, or at times of night where not many people are playing. Just so it doesn't
Yeah.
like turn into a desert.
Or how modern games sometimes do when they give you the first couple of matches against bots, like maybe first 5 or something. So the game is basically preparing you to fight real players or something like that. There's lots of ways we can do something like that, or where Go bots can be appropriate and not just like in PvP or when there's like uneven number of players or something.
Yeah. So I feel like what I'd like to think about is like how can I, or from a high level, like how could we build like a framework that you could use that to build bots or something, like you're saying, like having raycasting, like building up a set of functions, or a set of like low level pieces that you could use to build like this type of AI you're talking about, or that people could maybe use that same set if people wanted to get crazy and do some like machine learning AI or something, like something that would support like all these different ideas. Like I'd love to.
Okay, so if there's one thing I definitely think would be like the barest minimum is the concept of a brain. Let's say a brain, because in Unreal, for example, there's a concept of a pawn and a controller. The pawn is basically like an actor or a vessel. So in our case, it's gonna be the spaz. And there's the controller, which is basically a set of like instructions or the interface between the player or the AI and the vessel. So the AI it cannot control the pawn directly, but it knows what it can do and what buttons to use to interact with them.
Yeah.
So the most basic like brain class, for example, would be something like, hey, I'm pressing this button, I'm pressing that button, and stuff like that, and only that. And those get passed to the pawn, or the pawn like understands these button presses and just does the actions depending on what you're pressing. So that would be like you could have like a sparse like vessel, and then you could attach a brain, which is like a player or an AI. You could have any different AI. You could do whatever you want, and it would still like work because it would go through the like most basic elements about reading. The AI reading about how to do stuff. We could implement that on the brain level, like reading about the game world and stuff like that. So I guess the brain should have access to that data.
Yeah, and that brings up questions. You're talking about like nav meshes and things like that.
Yeah.
I feel like ideally it'd be great if we could automate that, or like I feel like
No, definitely.
what I want to one thing that I'd love to get away from is having, map makers have to build, like, uh, I forgot what they're called, but it's just the little like meshes that keep people from falling off cliffs and stuff like that. Like
Yeah, the game calls it railings or
or
bumpers.
yeah,
It's like
railings or
used
bumpers. That's
interchangeably.
Yeah, that's right. But I'd love to, if possible. I've mentioned this before, like using raycasting or something. It'd be great to like have that happen more automatically with like the spaz node or something. Um, but yeah, along those lines is like I'd love to not require people to do those little like extra bits like railings or nav meshes or something like because so many people just want to like build a little map and play around with it, and it'd be great to
Oh
be able
yeah.
to have that work without that extra bit of work that you don't realize you have to do.
Yeah, definitely. In Unreal, for example, this system is built in, and it basically calculates like a walkable area. You can
Okay.
choose how big the actors can get and how steep a ramps they can walk and stuff like that. So
Okay.
the very basic like, and of course how detailed it is, how many segments it's like separated. So the walkable space is basically calculated on the fly
Okay.
or at the beginning of the map creation, depending on how you want it. Because if you want to have moving obstacles, then nav mesh would probably be blocked because it's like a wall and stuff like that. But if you have static maps, we only have to do that when we, for example, create a map or load a map
Yeah.
or have some kind of data. For example, imagine a Blender plugin that would just bake that kind of data
Yeah.
and just have it like in some kind of like class or maybe abstract or something, and the bot would just read the data from that and just know, okay, this is how the map looks like. We could take the Cobham map, for example, and just do something extremely simple, like only take we could do something like that. We could just take the Cobb map and use like decimate, but only show the floor, like the floor normals or something like that, and ignore walls and ceilings. And that would be like the most simple nav mesh.
Yeah.
Of course, you would still have to like separate it into smaller chunks to have it be like more detailed and stuff. But generally speaking, that would be probably the easiest way to accomplish that.
Yeah. There's that part of me that wants to like or yeah, thinking about like destructible maps or stuff we don't have yet or like you're saying like obstacles
Oh yeah,
moving around, like it'd be awesome to have like bridges that are going up or down or little things like that and trying to keep in mind like what
oh
we
yeah,
would need to update it for those situations or if like the
yeah, and how often and yeah,
yeah. I guess that's one of those like
and of course have. Hmm?
oh, I was gonna say I guess that's probably no pun intended one of those like cross that bridge when we get to it things like I'm sure we'd figure something out but yeah,
Yeah,
just wondering like what we need to do in those cases. Um,
like yeah, Unreal. If you have like an update, like if a thing affects the nav mesh, every time it moves, it basically requests that, hey, I definitely want to change the thing, right? And it turns out, okay, so the wall is moving, so the wall is requesting, okay, we gotta regenerate the nav mesh because I'm changing like lots of stuff in here. So the engine is like fine, and it just rebuilds it on the fly. But yeah, it is kind of wasteful in terms of performance, and you still have to like pick, okay, how big that wall is, how big of a hole we're making, how much that hole is moving around and stuff. So the
yeah.
bigger the obstacle, the more performance it takes, because it basically has to like separate like two squares into one square maybe, or have a hole inside that square, and you have to connect it it's a lot of hassle, and it's definitely something I'm not capable of doing. Like it flies way over my head.
Which it gets me thinking about something else, like not to go off on a tangent, but in terms
Oh
of
yeah,
writing fancy bots and AIs and raycasting and stuff like that is thinking about resource limits and stuff for that too. Like if people are writing an awesome AI or awesome bot that runs really well on their PC, but then someone tries it on their low end Android phone and it just explodes or like just like brings it to a halt. Just some way to like enforce CPU limits on that stuff or something to give people limits to where like you're having to kind of write your bot in an efficient way or you write your AI
like yeah, one thing that definitely comes to mind is one of those GPU and CPU tests. We could write something for AI, like have the something like have them play a match or something, and it would just basically do it as fast as possible and would just give you a score or something like that. Like how
yeah.
performant that bot is. Of course, I know sometimes bots can like hang, and waste lots of resources because it doesn't know how to get off a ledge or something.
Oh
Or
yeah.
maybe most of the time it's like very doesn't need all the resources, but there's like one computation that's like pushes the limits and stuff like that. So maybe you would definitely have to like have an average and have a maximum.
Yeah. Or some of these, like if they would only be available through cloud games or something like that, then they would know that there's more CPU and memory available in those cases, maybe, or whatever the limits on a cloud server game would be. Might be.
Yeah, how would you even test these bots? Because some bots only are only like are made for like playing in PvP, so the goal is to play PvP,
Yeah.
and then the how well the bot does is basically how whatever your goal is as a designer. Sometimes you don't need fancy bots, like I mentioned. Also, the bots work. They don't need lots of stuff. They
Yeah.
are very low on resources, so you can have tons of them. But then the test made for them wouldn't fit the tests made for PvP bots. So that's one way that, yeah, that's gonna be hard to judge. Maybe we would have to find some other way.
Yeah. I do for the cloud servers. I do intend to like have some sort of resource limitations. Like I know, on Linux machines, if you're running different processes, you can. There's ways to say like, oh, each process only gets 10% CPU max. So I do want to do that. Like as more things are running on cloud servers, so that'll like naturally enforce limitations. I think.
Yeah, definitely.
So but yeah, it'd be cool to have something more exact too or something. Yeah. So we'll see how that works. I'm sure that stuff will vary also. If a server's overloaded, it'll naturally. I mean, I want to try to not overload servers, but yeah, it would naturally constrain things a little bit. But hopefully, we could have some sort of stats or something, so we could see like, oh, this person's AI bot is running too slow, or just to warn them. I don't know.
Now, generally, most bots would probably have some kind of like a tick function where basically it would think in intervals. So basically, it would wait this much time, and then I'm gonna think this much time. I'm gonna think again and stuff.
Yeah.
So we could, for example, make a bot that would basically decide how often we should think. Sometimes we need to think every frame because we are only one, and we have a powerful PC, so that's fine. But then we are on a server, we might be a bit dumber just so we can keep up and stuff.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
course, without being so dumb that the bots don't work properly. And when there's 8 people, I think most people won't notice.
Yeah.
And of course, timer stacking, which is something that you try to fix with the TNT, and made it kind of a pain to make a plugin for it.
Or what is this? What's stacking?
Timer stacking.
What is that? Or what?
Timer stacking. So basically, when you have timers like both execute like at the same time, and they always run every second, for example,
Uh huh.
then every second you have two functions at the same time, and sometimes you want to stagger them.
Oh yeah.
So in 1.7, I think one of the changes made to the TNT is the tick. It doesn't happen every second. It happens every 1 second, something like that.
Okay.
So it's not a perfect second. So I cannot just track how much seconds it takes to respond to TNT. I had to like make it. I had to find a different way to like get that same information, but maybe a bit more obscure and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's something I find myself doing a lot in the code is like anytime I have some timer going off like once per second, I usually just add either a little like random offset or I do like 1.0371 or just something to it's never really been a problem, but it just seems like if there's a lot of timers happening at once that could cause hitches, so I'm always trying to make things not quite exactly round numbers.
Yeah, so which is one of the reasons I kind of had a hard time making, because people asked me to have it so it would display the timer in plain text, like this seconds to detonation and stuff. It would just go 1, 2,
Oh yeah.
3 and stuff like that. But I couldn't do that when the timer is like a weird offset. So I had
Oh
to go
no.
like a percentage.
Oh
So
no.
how close it is to responding. So it's not like 100% accurate, but it is accurate enough. So you could still like feel the respawn timer,
Yeah.
let's say.
Okay, cool. But
But that's
yeah,
like an off-topic thing.
yeah. So I was scrolling through this. This is the existing like Spazbot code. If anyone was looking at it,
Oh, let me look it up.
it's very
Okay.
very simple. Where if you look at, let me find a little bit. So update AI. This is kind of what you're saying. It's like a tick function. This just gets called per Spazbot like once every. I forgot how often it runs. It's like 10 times a second or a few times per second or something. And so you can see this logic here. Like we're not a flag bearer. If we're holding anything but a bomb, drop it. It's just like little bits of pretty simple logic.
And there's the state machine, like self node throw. This is one of the states, which is the
Yeah,
throw state.
yeah, exactly. So the Spazbot is always doing one little thing at a time. So he's throwing or running away or trying to punch or whatever. Charge. Oh yeah, charge is like you have a target and you're running towards it. Wait
Yeah,
is just
anyone
chilling.
above it.
Yeah. Flee is like running away from something. Yeah. So you can see all these little things where this is all the existing bot logic. It's just little bits like if you're charging, do this. If you're waiting, do this. And it's
It's
basically just,
basically conditions.
yeah, it's just setting like basically the control values on the spaz node. So it's like move left or right, move up, down. So it's like releasing the control stick here essentially. Um, so it's, we don't have like a brain class necessarily, but it's kind of doing what you were saying, where it's just like taking a simple set of inputs and using that to like
Yeah.
directly control the node.
So I assume each bot basically like either gets the player position like on the daily, or he always is aware of the player position. I don't know which one.
Yeah, it's, oh man, I haven't been in this code for a while.
Maybe should be at the top when defined. Maybe the class is called something like that. Not the class, the variable.
So there's get target player point. So
Maybe this is the position of that player.
yeah, where is, at some point like the game like sets all these. It basically says like, hey, these are the sets. These are all like the players that are currently in the game, and here's all their positions. So it like feeds that into the bots. So I don't know if the bot uses that for himself. It probably uses its own node. Oh yeah, like here's something, update AI, grabs its own like position, so it knows where its
Yeah,
own
some
spaz
position.
is.
Yeah.
So it uses this in a few places, I assume. Burr, burr.
Yeah, I,
Oh
I
yeah,
definitely know
RPOS.
charge is like getting the distance from player to self. So maybe we could take a look at charge.
Yeah. Charge. Yeah, somewhere it should be setting that. Where is that?
Maybe I mistook it.
Well, it should be there somewhere because there's a few values like charge closing in. Like it keeps track of like, oh hey, we're getting close to the thing we're charging to. Oops, getting a little too high here. Yeah, and there's these values like if we're between min and max charge distance, we start charging or whatever.
I mean, of course, the brain has like sometimes can have powers. If we want to give it data, it can have powers that the player has no access to, like health.
Oh
So
yeah,
there's one thing.
yeah,
Maybe okay, the player has access to health, but it's like obscured. Sometimes you see the health bar, and most of the time you only see the flashing, and most of the time you assume it's like full or half health, unless he's blinking fast, which means you can take him on hit.
yeah.
So it definitely depends on how much we want to expose to the brain, and if it's gonna run on the server, then I think we could give it access to everything.
Yeah, that's true.
Or in terms of game world, for example, or the game mode, like the game mode and the game world. It doesn't have to think outside the box.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good like it's a good design question. Yeah, it's like do we make this thing that's very constrained and it only has like a limited set of inputs, like it can see the world around it or a very limited view and then it only can set its own, movement controls? Or yeah, do we make it more open-ended where like a bot brain could control whatever, like it could spawn power-ups or
Like,
something. I don't know.
like imagine a bot, for example, that would just look at the scoreboard and say, okay, this guy is in the lead. I should stop him from getting more points.
Yeah.
So this is probably the kind of information we want to give the bot, for example. This that kind of stuff that the game mode has like available, maybe some kind of global variables. What about game modes that are like custom? For example, my hot potato mod. Maybe the bot would have to know which player is marked, for example, and which one's on stand.
Yeah.
So they could like react based on what's happening around them, because there's some unique information that's unique to a game mode. Like I mentioned with the capture the flag thing. So we need to have like make goals and actions, which like can read the current game mode, let's say,
Yeah.
and the current game state, let's say.
Like run around. That basically overrides the bot AI, I believe, where it just like the game mode itself is kind of feeding the bot what to do. It's just like, oh, you're in this box, go right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can see yeah, there's got to be some sort of like interaction between, the game mode might want to feed the bot some information, like you said, like, oh, this player's in the lead, try to kill him. Um, but then, yeah, you kind of want the bot to be independent also. So it's an interesting design question.
Yeah, generally, another AI concept. Generally, there is like a concept of a blackboard, which basically is like a set of variables of the bot which get updated with information depending on the state. So sometimes they would just read if they request the state. For example, okay, we need to know where the player is. Okay, so I'm just gonna mark it on my blackboard. And sometimes these blackboards can have like, if you have like a squad AI, for example, we would have multiple bots reference the same blackboard. So for example, if you have, imagine like smart co-op bots. If you want to make the players miserable, you would do that. Every bot would basically know where the player is and basically pass each other information about what they're doing. So we could have like Roman configurations and stuff like that. So to surround the player from all sides and stuff,
Yeah.
or have some kind of ganging up AI and stuff. So yeah, basically the concept of like somewhere in the code, like multiple states are stored, which are updated on the need to know basis.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that being useful. Or even just like a simple capture the flag bot, you might want like one or two players staying back to guard the flag and the other two going to retrieve the flag, just some sort of
Yeah,
coordination. You-
like every time the bot needs to know where the flag is or needs to have its position updated, we could just update the blackboard for like the whole game mode, because this is the kind of information that's public and should be known by everybody.
Yeah. It's kind of like
And maybe when
what's
the flag moves, it could be updated by the blackboard. It doesn't have to be like a constant update, like every second or so. We just have to update it when it changes,
yeah.
or when the bot asks for it.
Yeah, like
One of
right
the two.
now, basically the equivalent of that is just like feeding all the player positions in. Like that's the one thing, the very minimal bot AI right now, it just sees like where are all the players? I'm gonna find the closest and charge that one or something. But
Yeah, the players is what the only thing that the bots care about.
yeah, but yeah, that would be interesting. Is like how would you expand that and like include what data would you include like in what mini games or whatever, and how often would you update it? Yeah,
And plus, so some data is can be game mode agnostic, but not always.
oh yeah,
Like for most game modes, knowing which power ups you have is very useful, and what the enemy's power up has. Like, oh, he has a shield. Maybe I shouldn't engage him, or maybe I should try grabbing instead of punching, or prepare a bomb if he's far away, or something like that. But in the Meteor Shower, you don't need that.
yeah. And that would be a challenge too, is like writing this bot setup and making sure it's understandable, or yeah, making sure there's not modes that aren't running when they don't need to be. Like you can, um, or then
So
oh, go ahead.
one of the mod ideas I had, which is something that would be like a testing ground for this, is like, imagine a game which is like a team game. You have one team and the second team, and they have an objective, some kind of. But then there's the third team, which is the AI, which is basically they only care about killing players and breaking chaos, and that's all they care about. So having these kinds of bots, like the onslaught bots, but basically have them navigate them PvP maps, would be fine. I think you don't have to add like special objectives or conditions like that, especially if you say, okay, they're just zombies. They don't have brains. They
Oh
want
yeah,
brains. So of course they're gonna have the like very basic grasp of the reality that they're in.
yeah, yeah. That's true. Just like giving the tools to be able to make simple AI like that, just at least like navigating levels better, and if you want zombies coming towards you, that could be fun. Like
Yeah.
the like you said right now, like the game, any game mode with bots right now is just wide open and flat, basically. So it would be
Yes.
interesting, like just having obstacles and like bots chasing you through a maze, or like that kind of
Yeah.
idea. That would be definitely a new thing.
Pac-Man.
Yeah, oh yeah, exactly. Pac-Man with bombs and physics. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Um,
And for zombie AI, you don't need GOP. You can have a simple state machine like always, but just having them enough mesh could vastly improve their intelligence.
yeah, yeah, totally. So, yeah, I'd be all
And
in
maybe
favor
maybe
of.
that's all the people. Maybe that's all the things that people need. Just that.
Yeah,
Like they don't have to set up like complex bomb throws or stuff like that, because that's another kind of worms.
oh
In
yeah,
co-op, the only thing know when to throw, and that's it. And you can control how often they throw bombs. If you
yeah,
have a bomb that has a shorter fuse, you can just tell them to throw them faster.
yeah. Yeah, that is definitely another. I was going to mention that. That is another can of worms. Is like with the physics and stuff. Like bomb throwing is such like a learned thing. Like trying to do it, especially like at different heights. If you're above someone or below someone, or if you're on a ramp, like the it's going to behave totally differently. So it's like trying to teach the bot all of that. Like that would be tricky. That's partly another reason why everything is just flat right now. Is like it's kind of hard coded to be able to do decent throws. On a level ground, but I didn't even try to think about like, the other variables that could happen there.
When I was playing the game, I noticed how much of the bomb throwing was muscle memory. Like I know how much I have to wait, which is something the bots know how to know. But here's the thing: we can take into account height differences and surface level changes. But if you tell the bots to just know how the bomb is gonna fly after throwing the bomb button and what influences that direction and power, I think that's gonna be enough. They don't have to know, like, okay, I'm gonna on the ball, for example, I'm gonna throw the bomb, so it skids across the top level and just goes down the ramp and kills a person that's
Yeah.
trying to cap the flag. So this is something this is player behavior, but bombs don't need to know how to do it. They could basically just always go for direct hits or something like that. Or maybe if they're far away, they could just throw a bit earlier. So hopefully the bomb is just gonna roll them and just kill them, like in Rampage, for example. Or
Yeah.
do very simple raycasts to know, okay, so this is flat ground, I can probably just throw them. I don't have to do direct hits, I can just throw it earlier and have it roll.
Yeah. Yeah, there's lots of ways you could
Like,
try, or yeah, you could even just, do full on predictions of like, yeah, exactly. If I threw it right now, like simulate where this bomb would go. Um, but yeah, some of that is getting too advanced. But then there's like, depending on the type of bomb too, like what if we come up with different bombs that have like different responses to gravity or something like that? It's like never going to be able to do like every possibility, but like you said, just
yeah.
getting direct hits on regular bomb physics, that would be possible probably.
And even easier when it's sticky bombs or impact bombs, because people already know how to do like consistent throws at long ranges. So we could teach the bot to do the same.
Yeah. And yeah, like I said, it was very much hard coded in the existing AI, where it's like they know how to. Yeah, it's hard coded. Like how long do you hold the bomb before throwing it? And just try to cook it off the right amount and stuff. But that's very much specific to the the standard bomb fuse times and stuff like that.
Yeah. And the main question is definitely how big of a demand it is. This is probably the one question that I asked at the beginning before this talk.
Oh
And
yeah,
basically, how many people would use these kinds of bots? This is one. And
yeah,
two, how beneficial they are to the game as a whole. Because at the beginning, I thought, okay, the reason the bots aren't in the game is because it's a lot of work for very little payoff.
yeah. Yeah, that's true. And at the end of the day, I still like my goal is to try to make online multiplayer as easy as possible, basically. Which if everyone's playing online multiplayer, then it's like we don't need bots as much. But it is still like a fun thing to have. Or even with online multiplayer, there are cases like you're saying the zombie thing. It's like a co-op game of you know 4 people against a horde of zombies coming through a maze. Stuff like that. So like that.
Or a PvP game mode with some enemy elements, like the map itself tries to kill you.
Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of why I was asking originally is like how thinking about it in terms of like how could I or how could we put some pieces in place to make it possible to do these bots even if we don't like fill out all the bot types or even if bots aren't implemented for every game mode or for every power up, just thinking about like how could we selectively add some bots here and there that would be useful.
So let's recap then for like my wish list of features, let's say, to make the perfect Bomb Squad AI. So number one would be the brain class or relationship, let's say. So you have an actor, it could be Spaz, it could be anything, but you have brain which basically has the basic necessary features required to read data and react on using the avatar, let's say. And then number two, nav meshes. Manual, automatic, doesn't matter. All that matters is the bot has like a basic way of reading the map and navigating through it. And then we get number three, which is raycasts. Even though the nav mesh exists, sometimes we want the bot to react depending for like calculating distance, which or for example collisions. Like imagine if Spaz had a gun and was shooting hit scan bullets.
Yeah.
Then we would want to see if they hit the wall or something. I don't want to have hacks like, okay, I'm gonna create a region node and I'm gonna expand it very long, I have it really long, and then just see, okay, am I touching the footing? Okay, so that means it's free, so I can just hit them.
Yeah.
and do the hacky stuff like that. We definitely don't want that. So
Oh yeah.
having a raycast would be fun, like a single function that returns the results. Maybe some kind of dictionary.
Yeah.
With if it's blocking, what it hit, what kind of physical node it hit, and stuff like that, who it belongs to,
Yeah.
the position it hit, stuff like that.
Oh, see you, programmer.
So that would be the three most basic elements, because once I have them all in place, okay, so for the GOP, I definitely need the brain class or something like that. So it would be easier to like read the data and just react upon it, because the GOP implementation is basically, I could hack a Spassbot to have the GOP implementation, but would it be like very simple or be friendly to the coder? I think not. I would have to make a separate Spassbot to have this kind of behavior. I would have to code everything from scratch,
Yeah.
including the nav mesh. But nav mesh is like, okay, so the nav mesh is the most important thing, I think, first and foremost, and then the brain and the raycasts, because the brain and raycast is like level 2. This is where the bots can reach from just moving around the map easily and just do very basic actions to like actually thinking and doing some pretty fun strategies.
Yeah, my thought actually thinking about it is I'd wonder if the very first thing that could be useful is the raycast, because technically you could, if you have a raycast function, you could use that to kind of like build a nav mesh manually or on the fly or something. It could be just ideally, we could build the nav mesh as part of the engine or as part of like building the mesh like output files, but theoretically, I mean, you could, using pure Python, if you had a raycast function, you could kind of start to build a simple little nav mesh on the fly. So it makes me wonder if
Okay,
like just
so
getting raycasting in there would be a good first step.
okay, so the raycasts I think are more beneficial to like overall game design rather than nav meshes, because raycast is more for stuff in terms of AI navigation. It's
Yeah.
for stuff that cannot be easily inferred by just comparing distances, like in terms of like onslaught co-op bots basically.
Yeah.
But raycasts are much more versatile. They have a lot more applications, but in terms of navigation, I think nav meshes are like much more important.
Yeah.
Because even though we can do like raycast and do like lidar style navigation or something like that, the bot will only know what's like in the near vicinity.
Yeah.
And it definitely doesn't make it intelligent. It just makes them like kind of like a mole. They will blindly stumble around and just know where to stand so to not fall cliffs. But here's the thing, we already have a way to avoid cliffs, which is the nav mesh.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm just meaning like, I'm not saying using raycasts instead of nav meshes. I'm just saying like if we have a raycast function, you could use that like to create a nav mesh like on the fly. So that might be,
Maybe
without.
actually,
I'm doing that exact thing in here somewhere. Let me see. I did something as like a dynamics, like to speed up. Yeah, collision cache. Here we go. Collision cache. Oh, I think this isn't using rays. It's using like boxes. But basically, I used to have a way to visualize this. But basically, what it's doing is like it's creating a grid. It's creating a grid above the map. And then it's just like doing a little box test like in that grid to determine like kind of, it basically generates a height map for the current map. And it's just using that as like a shortcut to determine if it needs to like test collisions. So like when things are falling, it'll check that height map to see like, oh, am I close to the ground? And if it is, then it actually does the collision tests. So
so it's kind of ray marching, but not really.
yeah. It was
or like voxel based nav mesh, like 3D.
Yeah, kind of. So it was basically, this was purely an optimization. This was just when I was trying to get it running on phones, like to get things running fast enough. It cut out like a big chunk of time that would get spent like doing collision testing. But basically, like something similar to this, even if it was on the Python level, if we had like a raycast function, you could then like build a little nav mesh on the fly just using Python code, or like refine it over time, something where it's like shoot 10 rays every step, and then just eventually your mesh gets more and more detailed.
Or have some kind of like a scanner at the center of the map, so that just spits rays and just tells you what it says like straight up, and maybe have like scan from the top or something like that, and just generate them up like that way. We don't have to like do some decimation of the collision mesh of the map itself or something.
Yeah, so that was kind of my thought, is like if there's something where we could, just getting raycasting in there, like you said, it'd be useful for lots of other things, like guns or, just any sort of AI stuff or other things. But yeah, we could also, that would at least give us a thing to use for simple nav mesh creation or testing or starting to mess with that. I kind of feel like that might be an easier first step than actually, adjusting the build pipelines or, asking everyone to go through a certain, Blender plugin or something like that to generate the nav mesh. Just a thought
Yeah.
that maybe that would be a good first thing is like the just the raycasting.
One idea I wanted to check. We have the Blender export plugin, which already exports level definitions. I was wondering if I could use level definitions to export points or something, or areas basically, where the bot would basically could connect areas like dots. So, for example, this area leads to this area, this area leads to this area, and stuff like that, and have like points connected with lines or something like that. And the bot would basically use that for navigation.
Yeah, that could be interesting to.
I mean, it would still be manual labor, but it could be offered. So we could just like have a nav mesh which is custom tailored to the map made, for example.
Yeah.
Maybe have some kind of very simple, like the bot would know how to avoid ledges. Maybe have some very simple like shortcuts on certain maps, like on Zigzag, you could jump to the TNT outright by getting a boost on the ramps and stuff.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. So I definitely wanted to try that, at least hacking it in that way, maybe using like the points, the name of the points as ways to connect them together, and not like have them, custom like built in a class or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that could
But
definitely
that's like
be
very
interesting.
that's very hacky, of course. So
Yeah. Well, some of this it's okay. I think if we approach it in a slightly hacky way, because it's kind of like experimenting and seeing what works well, and then if something works well, we can kind of clean that up and make it a more official, always included part of the engine or something like that.
yeah.
But yeah, that's why I was thinking like what building blocks would be good to start experimenting with the stuff like the raycasting things. The question that it brings up for me is like with the raycasting stuff is like how could I enforce like keeping that usage like lightweight or something like that, because if the simplest form would just be a Python function that immediately does a raycast and then returns that value or something, but it makes me wonder like is that going to get expensive? Are people
So
yeah.
if there's one thing that I realized is that raycasts are cheap if they're line traces and not like box traces or sphere traces.
Yeah.
And it's also cheap if they're like against, I think, spheres or boxes, one of the two.
Okay.
And more complex against custom collisions, because then you have to do like more manual labor to detect that. At
Yeah.
least that's how I know what I noticed when working with Unreal, or what people seem to be like parroting online.
Yeah.
So line traces are fine. You can do them every tick even, but more complex like sphere traces and box traces, it can be a bit more work.
Yeah, and as I said, they're already built into the physics stuff. I believe that is, I think ODE has, where does all that stuff live? Oh, that would be under external. Do I have that here? Oh, it's not in that project. But yeah, the Open Dynamics engine stuff, like the rigid body layer, it does have like a ray class. So it's like we just have to expose that. Again, I would just want to make like, I don't know if it'd be good to have some sort of limit or not, I don't know, or like a delay where it's like you batch them up and then it does them all at once and gives you the result like the next frame, but then that's harder to work with. Have to think about that a little bit. Like I said, maybe the simplest thing would just be some function in Python that would immediately do that test, talk to the physics layer, and then get back to you on like what it hit. And that maybe it would be fine as long as, like any other Python code, you'd have to just be careful not to run that too much or you'll start to slow the game down. But hopefully that wouldn't be a problem.
Like personally, I probably wouldn't create an nav mesh using raycasts alone, make it automatic. And maybe just me being stupid, but maybe it's probably I could probably do something like cliff detection, maybe like I do in one of the other projects I was making. So like in game engines, not in Bomb Squad.
Yeah.
So like cliff detection or stuff like that. That's very easy. That's what raycast can do, and wall detection too.
Yeah.
But generally, like getting an overall like perspective on the map, that may be a bit more difficult, and especially doing it on the fly.
Yeah. I mean, in that case, it would be a lot of rays that would be required. So, like, I think it would be,
Oh yeah.
Like in that case, doing it with Python, you'd want to be doing something smart where it's like you're progressively building it. Like you start with a really sparse one, and then like it gets more and more detailed over time. Like whatever,
Yeah.
because then you're only having to, you're shooting some certain number of rays every step or something. So it's not too
And
too big of a cost.
where geometry is guaranteed.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We'd have that too. I mean, I think that's probably in there. There's like bounds for where the map terrain nodes are, so we could start at a
Yeah,
reasonable
but we could,
bounds.
for example, not do a second pass if we know that between these points is a guaranteed like hole.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Like if we know the bounding boxes are not covering a certain area or something like that, um, it's tricky because you never know. Like if a ray misses something, it could just be because there's a tiny little hole in the mesh. So it's like it's hard to know. Like, should I send more rays around this? That becomes like a
Yeah,
rendering algorithm problem at that point, almost.
yeah, and this system also assumes that maps won't have multiple levels or layers.
Oh yeah,
Like TipTop, for example, you would have to make sure that the points below the ramps are all filled in terms
yeah,
of geometry.
yeah. Which
Because
that's
once the player reaches there, the bots they have no idea how to reach that player.
yeah. They would assume. Yeah, exactly. They assume that they're like on the ramp because there's only one level. Yeah,
Yes,
so that would be bad. That does. I mean,
or under the map.
there are limitations like that already in the game in other ways, like the graphics engine. It like basically projects shadows like straight down. So like if you're
Yeah.
standing on the ramp, your shadow is going to be shining on the ground below the ramp too. So certain things where it's like the game technically supports multiple levels, but it causes kind of weird issues. So it's like I mostly try to avoid them. So maybe that would be a reasonable limitation. Is like if you're having nav meshes, it just assumes that it's you don't have like overlapping areas or something.
Yeah, but right now it's definitely like fear crafting levels. So it's basically what can we accomplish in terms of navigation using just raycasts.
Yeah. So.
And personal opinion is I probably wouldn't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah. So yeah, it'd be interesting to just try to like the explicitly made nav meshes, etc. So
Yeah, I mean that would be much easier on me actually.
yeah, and if the nav meshes themselves are decently sparse, it's like you could almost just like bake that out into like a Python struct or something like that, where we wouldn't necessarily have to come up with like a new model format or like add that to the assets or something. That could just almost be like embedded into the map Python code if they're small enough. Who knows?
And in terms of like official implementation, in terms of navmesh navigation, all we could have is, for example, a list of points. Maybe get which lines, which points are connected by specifying a point, and of course how to reach that point and have like a path in terms of like arrays or dictionaries. So we could have so I want to get to this point from this point, and we'll just print you how many ports are along the way and in chronological order or something like that.
Yeah.
And you could just react based on that. So
Yeah.
extremely simple, and it could use whatever algorithm is easiest maybe. And then if people want to do some crazier stuff, they could like write their own algorithm or functions for that navmesh.
Yeah.
In which case they would just expand the navmesh class or something like that,
Yeah.
or helper functions, whatever.
Yeah. But yeah, that could be interesting to start to play with in terms of, again, like the map metadata hasn't changed in since the beginning of the game too, so that'd be interesting. You're talking about like connecting map like base points to lines and things like that, or having a higher level understanding of like how do I get from flag A to flag B, or whatever.
This is a very complex topic, and I assume I think we probably exhausted like
Oh yeah,
everything in terms of like basics.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's one of those things where like we'd have to just start implementing it and then like see what problems we run into, or that would, yeah, one of those things where like you can't kind of design it all from the beginning. You just have to kind of experiment and see what you need and how it goes. And
Yeah, like we know what other engines do. We know how that works. We could just clone that and see what happens.
yeah, and then just like let it evolve based on like what we want or what we need. So, but yeah, I'm all in favor. Like
Yeah, sure.
I like I said, I'd be happy to get a a raycast function in there or point people in the right direction that want to do that. That would be pretty easy. At least like the simple one. If we want it fancier, like if you want to, I mean, not to go off on a tangent again, but whenever I do stuff on the Python layer, I always want to think about like how can this be set up so that there's the minimal amount of Python code running, because Python code is slow. So, thinking
Yeah.
like how you'd want to use a raycast, you'd almost want something, but if people would want to like set up callbacks or something like that, like if like shoot
Yeah.
a ray here and let me know like when something crosses it, or something, as
Yeah.
opposed to like running that raycast code every single frame. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's almost like
Worst
setting
case,
up events. Yeah.
worst case scenario, the raycast could be asynchronous, like optionally asynchronous. Like the raycast just is called, and then just get that data, whatever. We don't have to do it right now. Or for example, have a function which basically calls the C++ code itself.
Yeah.
Like we already have like create new node function, which is I think engine, which is like a function, Python function that calls an engine function or something like that.
Yeah.
If I assume that how that works.
Oh, this is interesting. So, like robotics code for detecting negative
Yeah,
obstacles.
yeah, this is the kind of lidar thing I was talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool stuff. But yeah, that is a good question. Like, yeah, how would we structure that ray test thing? Because right now, the way the physics engine works is there's basically one single step for when the engine takes all the stuff, like all the spheres and boxes and everything the terrain, the meshes that are colliding, and you just kind of tell it like, okay, now calculate collisions, and it sorts all that stuff and does hashing and this and that, and then it'll basically give you a big list of like, okay, this and this are colliding here, this and this are colliding here, this and this are colliding here. So it's able to like optimize and like do only the tests that it needs to do. So that might almost lean more towards like the asynchronous thing where it's like, okay, create these rays and then include them in your tests, and then let me know after like the next step like which ones collided. Like something like that would fit in with the rigid body system more cleanly, as opposed to like
Yeah, definitely.
the exact like tell me now who is this ray colliding with. Like that would probably have to do more work because it wouldn't be doing that sorting, because like the rigid body system wouldn't want to sort all this stuff just for one ray. It's like we want to just sort it like one time. So in order to like get an
depending if the raycast like stops on the first collision ever, or if it's gonna return everything it collides with.
yeah,
Because in
there's that
Unreal,
too.
at least, there's two versions. There's the line trace and there's the multi-line trace.
Yeah.
Or multi-trace. Multi-trace is basically get everything from point A to point B, and the first is just return whatever we hit first.
Yeah. And I'd have to check. I haven't looked at like the old ODE line code in a while. I'm trying to remember if it has options for both, or maybe just one that returns everything. But then we could like sort that ourselves, but it wouldn't, might not be efficient if it's still testing everything. Like, oh, we tested these 25 objects and we just care about the first one.
Yeah, and assume if there's only like multiple line trace, it would calculate all of that, and then on the user end we have to get the dictionary, and then only take the first element or something, and then only the first like raycast or that specific variable of that result basically. So
Yeah.
so we get one thing and we have to go through all kinds of hoops to get it.
Yeah. And for stuff like that, I would definitely want that to be like on the C++ layer if possible. If you're basically saying like, give me the closest point. It's like, yeah, if we do that in C++, we can do that pretty fast. But like something like that would be like, I definitely want to avoid that in Python, where it's like, oh, you have this ray went through like 20 spaz objects, so you have like 40 rigid body point or 40 different points. Go ahead and sort those in Python. Like that's gonna add up real quick.
Yeah.
If you're trying to do that, like
especially if you want to do it like on tick, for example, for cliff detection or something.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. So like if every spaz is like doing that for cliff detection, and you get like 8 or 10 spazes in there, then there's like that's happening 8 or 10 times, and if each of those is colliding with every mesh or like a bunch of different stuff, you can definitely kind of see like how this stuff can get out of control if you're not careful with it. Like the things can slow down. It's so tricky to like keep things minimal.
Oh boy, that was a lot of info.
Yes. So for those of you still here, hope we didn't overload you with nerd talk, but it's hopefully some of you got something out of this stuff too. It's interesting to chat about like just like this low level tech design stuff, like all the weird things that go into just making pretty pixels appear on the screen. But yeah, we should definitely get a raycasting thing in there and start playing with this stuff or something. Or if you want to start just writing like a brain class or whatever, just something that would kind of let you give you a little playground. As you said, I think you'd want to like not try to build this into Spazbot. I feel like you'd want to like fork off something else like a Spazbot 2 or like Ultra Spazbot. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, or PvP bot or something. I don't know.
Yeah, just a more generalized thing. I feel like Spazbot at this point, it's like it's kind of set in stone to where like it works for those existing scenarios. So it's like
Yeah,
I don't want to try to like make it fancier too much because then I feel like it would be breaking stuff.
10,000 lines of code.
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, how many lines is this?
I
It's
mean,
oh yeah,
I was just guessing if I was implemented GOP in Python, how many lines it would take in one script.
oh yeah, that'd be a decent amount. It's tricky sometimes to like split things apart. Like I'm always aiming for 1,000 lines just because that is if I go over that, my little linter complains like I have to do this little too many lines. Like yes, I know this file's too long, so I am always aiming for 1,000 lines of code. But it's sometimes it's hard to keep things that small if there's like a big system. It's like how do you break that apart? But it's definitely better than it used to be. The old like 1.4 era where there was like 10 or 15,000 line Python files, like BSUI or whatever. Like everything was in there.
Actually, I remember someone asking the question of why the power ups like the player reacts to the power ups and not the other way around. And I was mentioning, okay, so the player already has access. Like it's easier to change the player itself when he reacts to the box and not the other way around. And I was thinking, yeah, if we want to like modularize this part of the Gecko, for example, we could have some kind of like okay, so who collects the power up box, and then just do the box itself could like do operations on the player and stuff.
Yeah, I
So
think that
that
would
could be
be.
one way to like differentiate, or a bomb type, so for example, like each type would be its own class and stuff.
Yeah, I think that would be the right way to do it because yeah, it's a little like you said, it is a little backwards right now where Spaz kind of has all the power up, code.
Knowledge and
Yeah, all the
know-how.
yeah. So like redesigning it, that's another thing where I'm hoping for this. Some of the scene v2 stuff. I can kind of take the opportunity to maybe cleanly re-engineer some of these nodes like Spaz and stuff. It would be so hard to do that right now, like taking the existing spaz.py file and like ripping that out and keeping everything from breaking, like that would be super tricky. But if we have this opportunity to kind of start fresh in some ways, like I think we can do like a Spaz 2 or like a better implemented Spaz where power-ups are no longer embedded, things like that.
Although I do understand the goal, because we definitely don't want the power up box to know about the player. The power up's only goal is to be a box and disappear when time runs out. They maybe disappear when someone collects it and just lets them know.
Oh
So
yeah.
that the power up box itself doesn't know anything about the player. That's just good design. We're kind
Yeah.
of imposing ourselves this one way dependency tree, let's say. So you have this root, which is the player, which reacts to different things, and the other things basically exist. But yeah, but definitely we want to see if the power box not like stopped existing or like immediately, would the player still work? And that's one of the main questions.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like there would
I mean,
be.
technically, yeah, because the message like it doesn't care about the message power up accept doesn't care about the box itself. It's just a message. It's like a delegate, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the actual thing we would be subclassing would be like not a power up, it would just be like a power or like a player mod or something like that. That would be, that would define like shields or it would define like
Or a status effect or stuff like that.
yeah. And so the power up box would simply be like a really simple class that just basically says like, hey, when I collide with him, I give him this power. It wouldn't have any of that knowledge itself. It would just be like setting up that message basically. Um, and so then yeah, it would be up to like
Yeah.
whatever the player mod or power or whatever. We'd have to come up with a good name for that. Player mod? I don't know. Something that would or spaz mod, something that would just like do the
Or
actual
or,
payload.
or player or spas effect maybe.
Or yeah, effect that could be good.
Because it could apply to buffs, debuffs, some kind of special powers,
Yeah,
abilities, or modifications. Because
yeah,
it would be like all encompassing, like spas effect.
yeah. And it's also like you'd want to be able to use that from other situations as well. Like every time I spawn a
Yeah.
spaz in this game mode, I want to give him this power or to give him this effect. Like every spaz always starts with shields or stuff like that, which is another thing that's kind of built into spaz. I feel like that could be taken out is the
So
shields.
the power knows about the player, but the player doesn't have to know anything about the power.
Yeah, and I feel like, abstracting it a bit more too, where it doesn't know too much about the player. Like, it'd be great if we could, we're always, I'm joking about like the mini penguins or something, having like different types of players potentially, or different types of player nodes, not just Spaz node. So like
Yeah.
if it would be possible for the power up to, maybe it would be like a base class or something that it could work with, that, just like a player
Yeah.
actor or something. So it could always apply to that, and then that could be represented by a Spaz or a mini penguin or a spear if you're writing like just a marble mini game, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Although I think this is the kind of topics that only interests programmers, I think. And that only fascinates me and you.
Oh yeah. Again, I'll put a warning on this week's YouTube video, like for extra nerdy this
This
week.
gets technical more than normal.
Yeah, totally. We'll have to get back to a less nerdy one next time or something. Just play some games.
That's all happens when I sit down to the microphone.
No. We've
I
had
was
good,
kinda
like, I
hoping.
feel like we've had less nerdy conversations when you've been on. But yeah, this one was definitely more a bit more nerdy. I feel like the last time Gun Squad, we were just playing that, so that was definitely more accessible to non-technical folks.
Yeah, like basically what could be done with the engine today, like 1.4.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I just might.
Yeah, okay, now man, I have so many projects. Like sometimes I have a hard time deciding which ones to do because all of them are exciting. All of them I want to do. All of them are like I want to do when I'm alone.
Oh yeah, same
and now I
here.
have and now I have these ideas and I just have to keep them suppressed because okay, I'm not gonna do the AI because that's like okay, another couple of weeks of
Oh
to
yeah,
do and stuff.
yeah, totally.
I wish I could clone myself.
I feel the same. I'm sure a lot of people feel that way. It was just like this stuff is fun, and it's hard to not go down weird little rabbit holes that can suck up 2 months. So
Yeah, if there's one thing I definitely learned is that I should probably pick stuff that I'm most like excited to work on, without the expectations that I will finish it. That's probably why there's so many projects that aren't finished and I just lie down because I had fun making them and that's all I wanted and that's all I care about.
yeah,
But back then I was very like stressed about not finishing stuff. I was beating down myself, but now I feel a bit more comfortable. I don't find it like that much frustrating when I work on a project like 1 week in a row and then I suddenly stop because something happens in life. Maybe a new hobby gets picked up. Maybe something happens.
yeah.
I just feel a bit more calm. And now I talk with my friend Sok, who made Explodinary,
Mhm.
and he has the same kind of like stuff. Now it's the reverse. Now he doesn't have he first didn't have like a thing that he didn't want to work on. Then I did, and I was talking. It's fine. You don't have to work all the time. Sometimes you just have to, do what you want. And sometimes take a little break, take
Yeah.
a step back because I constantly beat myself about it, and that's something that I definitely want to avoid. It's something that I still learn about, even though it's not an entirely solved problem. Although I'm closer to solving it than ever before.
Yeah, I feel like I mean, I've been trying to solve that for a long time, and I don't know, it doesn't seem totally solvable, but I kind of feel like it is healthy to let yourself go down a weird little tangent and do something different, and even if it doesn't lead somewhere. But yeah, there's the balance where like if you do that all the time, then you never finish anything, so
Some of my best work actually came from me taking a step back and doing something like very simple, but something that I wanted to do. That's why I made Bombing Over It. I made it in 2 weeks
oh yeah,
or something like that.
yeah. I always tell the story of Bomb Squad, like the origin of Bomb Squad. I was writing some other like game engine sort of thing before that. It was kind of my hobby, maybe from I think high school, from like 18 up until throughout most of college for me. So maybe up until 24 or something like that. But I never like made a actual game out of it. It was always just like me making little engine pieces and stuff and thinking like, oh, I'll put this into a game later. But it never evolved into an actual game. And so Bomb Squad for me was just like a reset. It was just like I'm literally going to spend like a weekend and make this stupid little game to play with my my roommates. And that was much more
You're
successful.
kidding,
Like,
it took you a week.
yeah,
A
like
weekend.
I expected it to be like a week project, and here I am, how many years later. But like that was a much more successful way to do it. I found is just like make something simple and small and achievable, and then expand on it, as opposed to like make these big plans and whatever, try to hope they'll come together someday. It's more just like, no, make something fun and simple and don't worry about, planning it too much. So
Yeah,
it's
I think this could apply to modding in general because most of the mods I made for 1.7, which are like very simple like gameplay mods or quality of life stuff, the biggest mod is Hot Potato in that like thing, and even then, most of these mods are like very simple, like one day, 2 day projects. They're not big, they're not fancy, they're not ambitious, they just work. And I
yeah,
think sometimes we kind of need mods like that or any projects like that to have like a reset because it's easy to dream big. I dream big. I constantly dream big. I have like 20 unfinished projects. What are you talking about? And 20 I haven't started yet.
yeah,
So it's very easy to be overwhelmed, like wanting to do everything. But sometimes you just have to take a step back and just pick what you want. Pick one thing at a time. Maybe if it doesn't work, don't worry. You can just drop it and move to other thing, which is kind of sad because I have like 6 projects, for example. I shot a couple of people, some of them, and they all love them. They all love these projects. But here's the thing: I don't want to know which one to finish or if I should start another one. But
yeah,
they all seem like within my reach. They all seem like they don't seem like waste of time. They don't seem like they don't work because they were proven to work. I just have to finish them, which is
yeah.
strange because most people have like a issue with not having ideas. Like, hey, I want to make a game, but I have no ideas.
Oh
I
yeah,
have no skills. I have no like passion or anything. I know motivation. What do I do? I am the opposite. I have too much stuff, and I have to restrain myself. Otherwise, I'm gonna go crazy.
yeah. It's
I'm already going crazy.
it's a good problem to have, I think, in a way. But yeah, I know it's frustrating too because yeah, I feel the same. Where there's like all these little things I'd love to do. I'd love to just pour time into like one little aspect of the game or something. But I
which
gotta.
is which is why talking with Sok kind of helped me like keep myself accountable.
Hmm.
Like we're in this together. We have our own like project, which means like I can always let him know what I'm working on, and I feel like I accomplished something, and then he can comment on the same, and we have like support each other, and it's like this constant upward momentum. It's like this troll face like comic where both guys ride on the lifters, and they lift each other up and they fly in the air.
Yeah,
That kind of thing.
yeah, yeah. It's definitely tricky to like yeah find. For me, that's been a big challenge. Like working for myself, doing this game is like keeping yourself accountable and keeping yourself on some sort of schedule, and yeah, not letting things take forever and whatever. So yeah, for me, it's helped a little bit. Like having these Wednesday screencasts and stuff. Just I have to show up and tell people like, no, 1.7.20 is not done yet. I'm still working on it, and so it's like that's a little bit of pressure. Like, no, I need to wrap this thing up. Stop adding new,
Hey, Miki, JRMP 2.8, when?
yeah, or just having the roadmap. Yeah, just stuff like that. Like just a bit like finding ways to hold myself accountable to a degree. I know like schedules always slip and things always take longer than you expect, but it's yeah, you got to look for those tricks to try to do that. Like when you're working at a
Yeah.
studio or something, it's like there's clearly deadlines and financial constraints and things like that. But it's definitely harder like working for yourself or when things are more fuzzy.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I did notice that being like super passionate and super like disciplined, both of these seem to be not working for me. I still have to find some kind of balance, some kind of like way. Because I remember at one point I was making stuff, and it's only recently that I started to take a step back and I noticed, am I just doing this for cloud? And it definitely hit when I was thinking about it. Okay, so that's why sometimes working on stuff isn't as fun as it could be because I get excited for like a week and then I just stop being excited and
Oh
then all
yeah,
of that disappears. And I was thinking, okay, maybe that's not the discipline. Maybe I'm just like, getting like I'm compulsed to listen to my ideas instead of like, get to the grind and stuff. But then I turned out, okay, I was just being hard on myself. I'm expecting something else than I signed up for, and it basically means that every time I abandon a project, the expectations like are misaligned totally. Maybe not that the project is gonna succeed, but that I'm just gonna have fun with it, or I'm gonna finish it. Doesn't matter which one comes first. So when there's a mismatch, the game fails generally.
yeah, yeah. It can be hard to just yeah keep passion up for something. It kind of goes back to what I was saying is trying to keep things small and like where you have a goal that's achievable because it's like if it's too far out like eventually you get bored or it feels like you're never going to get there and things trail off. stuff that's like purely based on like passion and like self motivation. It's like I feel like that's important is to keep something like dangle a carrot out there in front of yourself.
Yeah, which can be hard sometimes because I did make projects which are like super simple, super fast, and I wasn't even happy from them because again once I experienced that high of releasing a big project, I just want it over and over again. It's like a drug, I can't stop. And
Yeah.
it's only projects that don't do it for me anymore. Like
Oh
that's
yeah.
not what I want to make. I want to make the big games, the ones that I'm excited about, that I want to think about every day and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Tricky.
I mean, that kind of worked with the Bomb Squad mods, 1.7 mods, which are fun. Definitely, I had fun making them, but it's not something that that propels me forward, so to speak.
Yeah.
I want to make the big mods, the fun mods, the mods that are like, I want to dream about and I want to think about.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, these take longer to make, which is like another like contradiction. So which one is it gonna be?
Yeah. Yeah. It's tricky. Tricky problems. I found other things like little tricks that work for me, or at least used to. I haven't done them recently. Is I'd wind up partnering with a company or something like that, or like there when Google was releasing Android TV, they reached out to me because I was on like the Ouya, and so like that was a that gave me like little dates or something, like a set in stone thing, like, oh, I need to have this thing running on this Google device by this date or something, so having like externally, like almost finding weird little like cheats and having externally imposed deadlines, like I found that to be useful as well.
Yeah, keyword here being external, because when I make them myself, it's super okay. I'm gonna follow them for like 3 days and that's it. I'm just gonna abandon it.
Yeah.
Every time I make a Trello board, I make a Codex board, I use some kind of apps like Tape, for example, or some kind of other like note-taking apps, or even do something like more remote, like even TiddlyWiki. Who even knows what this app is about? But I used all of it and it didn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tricky. I don't know of any good tricks. Like I said, the things that have worked for me are like external deadlines or a little bit of like this stuff, like not peer pressure, but accountability, telling people like, no, I'm not done yet.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because it does definitely is because I made JRMP, it kind of puts like a target on me. It kind of means, okay, so this guy can do this, then the next thing is gonna slap my nuts too, hopefully. And sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. It really depends. But the point is, once you do something good, people kind of expect you to do more things like that. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's not possible sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it looks like we've put everyone to sleep here. Shucks. Well, hopefully some people have gotten some stuff out of this.
Whoops.
So, but all good.
So sorry, I was being personal here. It's just something that it's much easier to talk about with someone like, one-on-one on VC.
Oh
Stuff
yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
It just makes you feel better,
Yeah.
And sometimes it's kind of like a rubber duck thingy. Like I talk to someone else about my problems, and sometimes the solution just comes up like by itself because I explain the problems and like I work through it, like audibly.
Yeah, it's interesting all that. Like they say it's always good to just like say something out loud, or give your give yourself a little speech in front of a mirror or something. Sometimes helps you kind of figure things out, or just talking to a friend or talking to people. So
Yeah, basically.
yeah. So hopefully it's been some of this has been useful to other folks too. I know there's some more nerdy folks listening.
Yeah, maybe not the next time, but maybe next time or something. I probably have another topic we could nerd over, but for now, I definitely don't want to, hog every single stream right now.
No, it's good to have you hop in sometimes. Yeah, so I love our little nerdy chats here and stuff, and seeing all the stuff you're up to. Like Gun Squad was awesome. And
that's good to know, and it definitely makes me more excited to work on other stuff too.
Yeah.
Maybe something smaller, but still like. And now that I think about it, okay, now I think I could make these kinds of mods, like these content like fun mods, like what if scenarios, but make it like super small and super like condensed.
Yeah.
I could still do something like that because that would be within my reach, and I could still like. I could try that. Maybe I'm gonna show something next time. We shall see. Is it gonna be one of my tangents? I don't know, but I definitely wanna see where it takes me.
Cool. Yeah. Likewise. Love to see that. Or things we're talking about with like bots. Like it'd be fun to. I still think it'd be fun to just have some sort of like, maybe not necessarily a contest, but just have people like coding different AIs for bots or something, just to see what.
All battles. I mean, technically you could do that. Yeah.
Yeah. It'd be Like I'm not sure like the logistics behind it, how we'd like set that up, but that'd be fun. Like everyone, hey, submit a Python script. We'll see who wins. Yeah. So.
Yeah, we shall see. I'm definitely gonna experiment on my own time, see what works. Maybe do something fun.
Sweet.
We shall see.
Cool.
Another one idea to my 50 other ones.
Oh yeah. It's always to-do list management. I think
yeah.
I have about like three different notes or files or something that are like my to-do list. At some point it gets long enough, I just like start a new one, or bring the top few over to a new one just to clear it out, because like some of these I know I'm not going to get to, but at least having them on a list somewhere so I don't forget about them.
Oh yeah.
Cool. Well, I think I might call it a day for now and get back to coding. I got to get this darn
Yeah, definitely.
1.7.20 done at some point. I have zero excuse. I'm going to be super ashamed since I'm going to be out next week. Got one more little trip, but if it's not released by the following week, I'm going to be super ashamed of myself. So I got to try to. Speaking of motivation, sticking to schedules and stuff, I got to try to get it out by then.
Oh yeah.
See, we got people wailing and gnashing of teeth here. Sorry, Kokex. But all right. Anyway, it's been fun. So thanks for hopping in and chatting. Good to talk nerdy stuff.
Oh yeah.
I'm not skipping office hours. I really am out of town next Wednesday, but then I will definitely be back on. So the following one.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah. Life happens definitely. Like
life
sometimes
does.
I get excited and stuff, and I just cannot think about anything else.
Yeah, totally. So, all right, everyone. So I will talk to all you folks later. Been fun. So,
Cheers.
cheers.